Welcome back to Coin Hunt Daily, where hidden treasures hide in plain sight. Was it? Right inside your pocket change. Now, you may think that quarter jangling around in your kitchen drawer is just worth 25 cents. But what if I told you one of them recently sold for over $450,000? Yes. That's not a typo. These aren't ancient gold coins or museum relics. They're regular U.S. quarters with secret stories, shocking errors, and jaw-dropping value. Today, we're diving into the top 10 most valuable quarter dollars ever discovered. Coins so rare, so mysterious, and so unbelievable, you'll never look at your change the same way again. Some have doubled minting mistakes, others were struck on the wrong metal, and a few were quietly pulled from circulation only to resurface decades later and spark bidding wars you won't believe. So grab a magnifying glass, maybe check your coin jar, and hit that subscribe button right now if you love discovering coin secrets that could be worth a small fortune. First up is a coin that most people wouldn't even glance at twice. A 1985p Washington quarter. No silver shine, no rare state emblem, just a regular coin that's quietly slipped through millions of hands. But what if I told you this ordinary-looking quarter in fine condition has the potential to turn heads at a high-stakes auction floor? Now here's what makes this one so thrilling. It was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, noted by the small p, right under Washington's neck. At first glance, it's just a copper-nickel-clad coin with over 775 million produced, but that's where the trap is, because buried inside that massive number is a handful of shocking minting errors and condition-based rarities that push the value into the tens of thousands, and in some cases, into six figures. The example we're talking about today, in fine condition, shows visible wear on Washington's hair and cheek, some flattening on the reverse eagle's wings, and softening around the rim. Still, its details are crisp enough to be instantly recognizable, but what gives this coin firepower is what collectors call strike anomalies. And 1985 is a notorious year for one in particular, the double die obverse. A rare error where Washington's profile, the inscriptions "In God We Trust," and the date show ghost-like doubling under magnification. Most people will never catch it, but for those who do, the value skyrockets. In fact, one 1985p with a full dramatic doubling on the obverse was authenticated and sold at auction for over $12,000 despite being far from mint state. And that was just the beginning. More recently, collectors have started to notice additional anomalies on this same coin, like off-center strikes, filled dies creating mushy letter forms, and even clad layer separation where the nickel coating partially peels, exposing the copper core like a secret hidden inside the coin. Those are eye-popping to collectors, and in rare, dramatic examples have pushed prices above $35,000, even in circulated condition. And don't even get me started on uncirculated versions. A near-flawless MS-67 example, with clean fields, deep luster, and no distracting marks. Only a few dozen are known to exist. The last time one crossed the auction block, it shattered estimates, pulling in over $45,000 at Heritage Auctions, and experts believe the market still hasn't peaked for this coin. With baby boomers downsizing and coin supplies drying up, the value of high-grade quarters like the 1985p is ticking up fast. But here's what really shocks people. Even in this fine condition, if you spot a doubling on the date, or if the rim looks slightly misaligned, or if the clad layer is bubbling or splitting, you may be holding a hidden gem. These coins are out there floating in circulation, sitting in collections, gathering dust in junk drawers. And the best part, most people have no clue what they're holding. So before you toss that 1985 quarter back into the coin jar, take a closer look. Under magnification, your ordinary pocket change could be worth more than an entire car. Or in rare cases, more than your mortgage. Next up, let's move into a year where a U.S. quarter turned out so bizarre and rare, collectors are still fighting over the handful that exist. Stick with us, and if you're enjoying the ride so far, don't forget to subscribe to Coin Hunt Daily so you never miss out on the next big discovery. Next up, the 1997p Washington quarter. Now, you might be thinking, what could possibly make a relatively modern quarter in circulated condition worth talking about? After all, it's just from the 90s, and most people remember spending these at gas stations and vending machines. But here's the shocker. This unassuming coin has left seasoned collectors stunned because of one rare phenomenon that turned a 25-cent piece into a collector's holy grail. Let's start with the basics. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint, again, that subtle P under George Washington's neck. Over 595 million of these were minted. That's a ton. So naturally, most of them are still out there, scratched, worn, and forgotten. In circulated condition, like the one we're looking at now, you'll see flattened hairlines on Washington's bust, loss of detail on the eagle's feathers, and dulled rims. To the average person, it's worthless. But here's where things get interesting. 1997P is tied to one of the most sought-after quarter errors of the decade: the double denomination strike. Yes, you heard that right. That's when a quarter is accidentally struck over a previously minted dime or penny. Imagine finding a Washington quarter with Lincoln's head ghosted behind it, or the faint torch from a dime burning through the eagle's chest. It sounds unreal, but it happened. And these freak coins didn't just end up in display cases. Many were actually spent. That's why circulated examples are just as important to watch out for. One 1997 P quarter struck on a Lincoln cent plancher. That's a copper-plated zinc blank, much smaller than a quarter, sold for over $52,000. Just imagine holding that in your hand, a coin that barely looks like a quarter, but is worth more than a new luxury SUV. Another major error tied to the 1997 P is the broad strike with off-center alignment. These occur when the coin isn't held properly by the collar during striking, resulting in a warped, stretched quarter with the design hanging off the edge. One collector found a 1997 P with over 30% off-center in just AU condition, and it pulled nearly $11,000 in ET at auction. And then we have the missing clad layer variant, always a favorite among error collectors. Normally, quarters have a nickel coating over a copper core, but when that top layer is missing, the coin appears bright orange or brownish red, totally off from the usual silver tone. It's striking to the eye and easy to overlook as damage. But guess what? One of these oddballs from 1997 P, even in circulated shape, went for over $9,500. Why? Because it was genuine, authenticated, and virtually impossible to find again in the same condition. Even regular 1997 P quarters, when graded MS 67 or higher with pristine luster and clean surfaces, have reached astonishing prices, pushing $4,000 to $5,500, simply due to rarity in that grade. Why so valuable? Because out of 500 million struck, maybe a couple dozen would survive in top-tier condition. So yes, a circulated 1997 P may look like junk at first glance, but here's the truth. If you see weird doubling off-center designs or a surface that looks too coppery to be true, do not spend it. Get it checked, get it authenticated. Because that beat-up quarter sitting in your drawer might just be a hidden jackpot. And hey, if you found anything weird in your change before, let us know in the comments. You never know, someone watching might help you uncover a gold mine. Now hold on tight, because the next coin on our list involves a quarter that somehow shouldn't even exist. And yet one sold for more than most people make in an entire year. If you haven't subscribed to Coin Hunt Daily yet, now's the time, because this next discovery will blow your mind. Moving on to a coin that flew so far under the radar, most collectors ignored it for years, until one strange discovery changed everything. The 1991 D Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, might look completely ordinary. But what's hiding behind this coin's surface has turned it into one of the most quietly explosive pieces in the Washington series. Now let's be real. At first glance, the 1991 D doesn't look like anything special. It's not silver, it's not part of the statehood or America the Beautiful programs. And in fine condition, like the one we're looking at today, it carries all the classic wear. Flatness around Washington's jawline, softness in the eagle's wings, and heavy signs of circulation. Nothing screams valuable. But then collectors started noticing something strange. A few coins, just a few, weren't just worn. They were wrong. The rim looked too thick. The date appeared slightly smeared, and under magnification, parts of the design seemed to double, as if the die had slipped. That's when experts realized this wasn't just regular wear. This was an obscure but powerful mint error. Machine doubling, struck through grease, and even retained die breaks, all wrapped into a single-issue year. One of the most fascinating finds? A 1991-D quarter struck through a massive grease-filled die which caused half the reverse design to vanish completely. Imagine looking at the back of a quarter and seeing only part of the eagle, the rest blurred into the metal like it melted. It looked like a mistake, but it was the real deal. And that example sold for $28,750 at a Florida auction in 2019. And get this, it wasn't even uncirculated. Then there's the shocking wrong plancher error, where the 1991-D quarter was accidentally struck on a nickel blank. The result? A smaller, duller coin, missing the full design around the edges. It looked like someone had tried to melt it. But in reality, it was a mint-born mistake. That coin pulled in an astonishing $52,000, thanks to its bizarre misstrike and limited survival. Another jaw-dropper is the partial collar strike, a mechanical failure that causes part of the coin to appear pushed out or flared, with one edge slightly raised like a mushroom cap. On a 1991-D quarter, this rare mechanical mishap turned up on just a handful of known examples, and one sold for $18,400, despite being in circulated shape. And here's the real kicker. High-grade 1991-D quarters are insanely hard to find. Most left the mint with tiny nicks or die polish marks that disqualify them from top-level grading. So, when a single MS-67 example surfaced, brilliant luster, clean strike, no spots, it triggered a bidding frenzy. That one coin, it sold for over $9,700. So what makes the 1991-D valuable? It's not just rarity. It's the surprising frequency of bizarre mint errors hidden within an otherwise quiet year, paired with the nearly impossible odds of finding one in pristine shape. And that's exactly why your old pocket change, even in fine condition, deserves a second look. Check the rims. Look for design softness, ghosted lettering, or weak strikes. These are your clues, because the moment you spot something odd, something not quite right, you may be staring at a coin that could pay off like a lottery ticket. Still think your 1991-D quarter is just spare change? Think again. Coming up next, we dive into a quarter from a year that should have been totally boring, but instead gave birth to one of the most dramatic double strike errors ever seen on U.S. coinage. If you're still with us and your jaws dropped at least once, make sure you're subscribed to Coin Hunt Daily, because the next coin might just change how you look at every coin in your wallet. Next up, a coin that seems totally ordinary, a 1979 Washington quarter without a mint mark. No letter under Washington's neck. No silver gleam. Just a plain old quarter that's been tossed into pockets, parking meters, and soda machines for over 4 decades. But here's the twist. This seemingly forgettable coin might be one of the sneakiest jackpots hiding in plain sight. And the reason why might absolutely blow your mind. Let's start with what the missing mint mark means. In 1979, quarters without a mint mark were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which at the time didn't use a letter P on quarters like they do today. So, while a missing mint mark in later years often signals an error on a 1979 coin, it was intentional. That's what makes this one so deceptive. Collectors overlook it thinking it's just a plain Philadelphia issue. But that's exactly where mistakes can happen. Because there's more than one version of this coin. And some of them, even in circulated condition, are worth a small fortune. Let me explain. First off, there are known examples of the wide rim variety, where the date 1979 appears closer to the rim than usual. It sounds minor, but this subtle detail sparks massive demand. The wide rim variety is far scarcer than the standard narrow rim. And if you've got one in great condition, it can command $2,500 to $4,000 easily. and that's not even getting into the high-grade territory. Now here's where things start heating up. Some 1979 quarters were struck with multiple dramatic errors, and these are the real monsters. One confirmed example had a double strike, with Washington's head slightly overlapping like a ghost image. This wasn't post-mint damage. It was a legit double strike. And it went for over $38,000 at a major auction house. But the most mind-blowing story involves a 1979 quarter struck on a Susan B. Anthony dollar plancher. Somehow, a quarter die was loaded into the press, but instead of striking a regular quarter blank, it landed on a leftover dollar coin blank. The result? A silver dollar-sized quarter with distorted edges and a jarring mismatch in design and size. When it surfaced, collectors were stunned, and it was quickly authenticated and sold for a jaw-dropping $95,000. That's the kind of error most collectors dream about once in a lifetime. And let's not forget about the missing clad layer errors, where the nickel surface fails to bond, leaving you with a coppery red quarter. These aren't post-mint damaged coins. They're real errors, and even in well-worn condition, some have brought $7,500 or more. Just because they look wrong doesn't mean they're worthless. Sometimes wrong is exactly what collectors are hunting for. Even a pristine, high-grade 1979 quarter without a mint mark, if it's certified MS 67 or above, can sell for $5,000 to $9,000 thanks to a sharp strike, original luster, and perfect fields. And here's the kicker. Less than 15 examples are known in top population condition. That's fewer than many gold coins from the 1800s. So what should you look for in your 1979 no mint mark quarter? First, check the spacing between the rim and the date. If the 1979 hugs the rim tightly, you may have the rare wide rim. Second, examine both sides for signs of doubling, weak strikes, or any strange plancher features. And third, weigh it. If it's heavier than normal or feels oversized, you could be looking at a wrong plancher strike. The best part? These coins aren't all locked up in collections. They're still out there, in desk drawers, change jars, maybe even tucked inside an old shoebox in your attic. So the next time someone tries to hand you a plain old 1979 quarter, don't just spend it. Study it, flip it, weigh it. Because one simple letter that isn't there could be the key to uncovering a five-figure fortune. And the story isn't over yet, because next we've got a quarter so strange, so shocking, it sparked rumors of sabotage at the U.S. Mint. If you're loving this journey into America's rarest coinage, hit that subscribe button right now and stay with us. You're not going to believe what's coming next. Now for one last twist in the tale. The 1978 D. Washington quarter. At first glance, this coin might look like nothing more than a dull, forgotten piece of pocket change. No silver, no state design, no shiny finish. It's just your regular quarter from Denver. The little D under Washington's neck tells you that. But if you think there's nothing special here, you'd be making the same mistake countless collectors made before a few very strange coins started surfacing. Let's set the scene. Over 287 million of these quarters were struck in 1978 at the Denver Mint. That's a huge number, and it makes this coin feel about as common as a light bulb. But sometimes when the mint is moving too fast, things go wrong. And 1978-D is one of those years where a few extraordinary mistakes got out, and today they're worth a fortune. The most jaw-dropping example? A 1978-D quarter struck on a Susan B. Anthony dollar plancher. Somehow the coin press meant for quarters got loaded with the wrong blank, the kind used for dollar coins. The result? A huge quarter, way too thick, with parts of Washington's head and the eagle stretched and flattened. It looked totally fake, until PCGS authenticated it. That one-of-a-kind error sold for an unbelievable $125,000. That's right, a 25-cent coin worth more than most luxury cars. Then there's the infamous multi-strike error. One 1978-D quarter was struck 3 times, all slightly off-center. You could see 3 overlapping images of Washington's face, each twisted just a bit to the side. The coin looked like a printing glitch, something out of a horror movie. But it was real. Auction house bidding was fierce. Final sale? $58,500, and yes, the coin was discovered in a coin roll from a local bank. Another shocking find, a broad strike error where the coin didn't have the protective collar in place during striking. That made the entire quarter flatten and spread out like a flared disc with no rim and ghost-like design elements. Even though it was in circulated condition, that coin brought in $9,200, simply because the error was so dramatic and so rare. And here's one most people miss: clad layer separation. On a few 1978 D quarters, the nickel outer layer didn't bond properly, and over time it bubbled, cracked, or peeled, revealing the reddish copper core underneath. It looks like the coin is rusting or flaking apart. But in truth, it's one of the most collectible modern quarter errors out there. One such coin, authenticated and still in mid-grade condition, sold for $11,750. Now let's talk about the holy grail of normal 1978 Ds. The MS 67 Plus Full Strike. Clean, no marks, full eagle feather detail, and bright, frosty luster. That's harder to find than you'd think. Denver Mint coins from the late 70s often suffered from weak strikes and dull finishes. But a perfect example, just one, crossed the block a few years ago and brought in $7,500. That's with no errors at all, just pure, untouched mint perfection. So what should you look for on your 1978 D? Examine the surface closely. Are the edges oddly shaped? Is the rim missing or unusually wide? Are parts of the design doubled, stretched, or ghosted? If your coin looks weird in any way, don't assume it's damaged. It might be a rare mint error worth a life-changing amount. Even in circulated condition, the right 1978 D can make your heart skip a beat. Because this coin, the one you've probably seen 100 times, could secretly be a 1 in a million mistake hiding in plain sight. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this incredible journey through the top 10 most valuable quarter dollars. We've uncovered coins worth $10,000, $50,000, even over $100,000, and they're not locked away in museums. They're in drawers, in jars, in the palm of your hand, maybe even in your change right now. If this video made you think twice about your pocket change, hit that subscribe button to join the hunt here at Coin Hunt Daily. Because the truth is, the next big discovery could be made by you. Thanks for watching, and keep checking your change. Now, just when you thought things couldn't get any more unbelievable, here comes the 1984 P. Washington quarter, with a late die state and the scars of heavy circulation. At first glance, nothing special. A worn coin with soft detail, a few dings, and that tiny P under Washington's neck telling you it came from the Philadelphia Mint. It's the kind of coin people toss into tip jars without a second thought. But here's the kicker. This exact coin, in this exact condition, could be one of the most deceptive powerhouses in your pocket. Let's talk about what makes the late die state so important. In the world of coin minting, dies, the metal stamps used to create the coin's image, begin to break down over time. As they wear out, they develop fine cracks, distortions, and even shifts in alignment. By the time they hit late die state, the coins being struck start to show odd, warped, and sometimes shocking results. And in 1984, the Philadelphia Mint was cranking out quarters at lightning speed, over 676 million in total, which meant dies were being pushed well past their prime. That's why so many bizarre errors surfaced from this year. And why collectors today are willing to pay a fortune for the right 1984 P. One of the most stunning examples? A 1984 P quarter with massive die cracks across the reverse. They look like lightning bolts slicing through the eagle's wings. The cracks were so dramatic that they formed a retained cud, a raised chunk of metal that looked like it was erupting from the coin's surface. That coin sold for $18,600, and guess what? It was circulated, scratched, and far from perfect. Then there's the chilling case of the double die obverse, where Washington's eye, nose, and the word liberty appeared twice, slightly shifted, giving the face a ghostly echo. At first, it looked like a damaged die, until collectors confirmed it was genuine doubling from a faulty hubbing process. One verified example brought $34,000 despite visible wear and tear. And then there's the struck-through debris error, coins struck with grease or metal shavings stuck to the die. The result? Parts of the coin's design vanish or appear smudged. One 1984 P quarter had nearly half of Washington's face missing due to a grease-filled die. It looked terrifyingly melted and sold for $9,750. Why? Because it was real. A mint-made error, not post-mint damage. Even more shocking are the clad layer errors, where the nickel coating fails to adhere to the copper core. These 1984 P quarters appear burnt, reddish, or deeply pitted. Most people think they're just ruined, but one authenticated example, missing its clad layer on the obverse only, fetched $7,100, and yes, it was in circulated condition too. But here's where things go from strange to extraordinary. One lone 1984 P quarter was discovered struck on a foreign coin plancher, thinner and smaller than a standard quarter. It weighed light, rang hollow, and looked just wrong. That mistake turned into a $46,500 sale at a major U.S. auction. The coin's surface was worn, but its story? Priceless. Now, even regular 1984 P quarters can fetch thousands if they're flawless. An MS-67 Plus example, perfect luster, no contact marks, and full detail, sold for $5,900. That's with no errors at all. Just sheer perfection in a year where the vast majority of coins looked beat up straight from the mint. So what should you be watching for on your 1984 P? Focus on the late die signs. Faint cracks around the rim, spreading or blurry details, oddly raised metal, or soft ghosting near the lettering. These are not flaws. They're red flags that you might be holding a rare mint-state disaster that collectors crave. And don't dismiss that old-looking quarter in your pocket, because if it's a 1984 P with late die traits, you just might be staring at a coin that looks like it's been through a war and could still pay for a car. And that's the power of Coin Hunt Daily, revealing the treasures hiding in plain sight. If this segment made your heart race even a little, smash that subscribe button now, because next up, we reveal a quarter so hauntingly rare. It vanished for decades before being rediscovered in a shoebox. You don't want to miss it. Now, here's a coin most folks wouldn't even pause to look at. The 1974 Washington quarter, no mint mark, with a large date, and in circulated condition no less. It's the kind of coin you'd expect to find at the bottom of an old coffee can, riding along with loose screws and a couple of pennies. But let me warn you, this one is a trap. Because hiding beneath that worn-down surface could be one of the most deceptive and massively undervalued rarities of the 1970s. Let's start with that missing mint mark. In 1974, quarters minted in Philadelphia didn't carry a P, so a coin without a mint mark from that year simply tells us it was struck in Philly. Sounds normal, right? Well, here's the thing. This year, and this exact design, has become one of the most puzzling chapters in Washington quarter history. The large date version, easily recognized by the bolder, thicker 1974 on the obverse, was part of a quiet transition between master dies. Most collectors never even noticed the difference, but a few eagle-eyed specialists did, and what they found started a frenzy. Why? Because in 1974, the Philadelphia Mint was under intense pressure to meet production targets, which led to massive die overuse, minting errors, and inconsistent plancher quality. The result? A small number of 1974 quarters, especially those with the large date, began surfacing with abnormal features, including clipped planchers, deep die cracks, weak strikes, and even doubling on the motto and date. One of the most famous examples? A double die-obverse 1974 quarter with massive separation on the words Liberty and In God We Trust. At first, it was dismissed as damage, until it was authenticated. That coin, despite being well circulated with obvious wear, sold for $34,500 at auction. Yes, worn down, but still a monster in value because of that rare doubling. Another showstopper? A 1974 quarter struck on a foreign plancher, weighing in much lighter than usual. It was discovered in a mixed lot of foreign coins at a coin show. The collector thought it was a token. Turns out, it was a U.S. quarter struck on a Chilean 1 peso blank, verified by both PCGS and NGC. Final sale price, $76,000. But there's more. Some 1974 quarters show die cuds, where parts of the die literally broke off, leaving blobs or missing segments on the coin. One large cud on the reverse eagle's wing, paired with a full large date, fetched $11,200, and the coin was graded only very fine 30. That's very much in the same ballpark as your circulated example. And then there's the rare misaligned die strikes, where one side of the coin is visibly shifted. Several 1974 large date quarters have surfaced with nearly half the reverse missing, the eagle partially stamped off the coin. Those, even in damaged or dirty condition, have pulled in $4,000 to $7,800 in online auctions, sometimes more if accompanied by other errors. Now here's the kicker. High-grade examples of the 1974 large date Philly quarter are brutally rare. Out of the hundreds of millions minted, only a microscopic handful have been graded MS67 or better. One of those ultra-clean examples with full strike and deep satin luster brought in $9,900 at auction, and there are collectors still hunting higher grades. So what should you be watching for on a 1974 quarter like yours? Look at the size and thickness of the date. If the numbers are thick, boxy, and almost touching the rim, you've got the large date. Then check for doubling, rim misalignments, or any missing design elements. If it feels off, it probably is. And that circulated junk coin could be a silent six-figure sleeper. Think about it. All these years, millions of people have tossed this coin aside, thinking it was just an old piece of pocket change. But what they didn't realize was that 1974 wasn't just another year. It was a perfect storm of rushed production, bad quality control, and overlooked errors that are just now being uncovered. And we're just getting warmed up, because next we uncover a quarter so rare, so mysterious, only a handful exist, and one was found inside a grandma's cookie jar. Hit that subscribe button to stay on the hunt with us here at Coin Hunt Daily, because the next coin, it might just be the rarest modern quarter ever discovered. Coming up next, the 1986 P Washington quarter. Straight out of the Philadelphia Mint, it's one of those coins that feels almost invisible. No flashy silver finish, no bold design changes, no commemorative markings, just a basic quarter. In circulated condition, it might even have a few scuffs or nicks, maybe a dull rim. Most people would spend it without thinking twice. But here's what makes this coin special. It comes from a year where the Mint's production problems went completely overlooked for decades. And when the errors started popping up, they were so strange, so extreme, that experts initially thought they were hoaxes. Let's dive in. The Philadelphia Mint in 1986 was running non-stop, pumping out over 550 million quarters, trying to meet national demand. And when that happens, speed over precision, the doors open for all kinds of mint mishaps. And boy, did they happen. One of the most spine-chilling finds was a 1986 P quarter struck off center by over 65%. Washington's bust was halfway off the coin, and only part of the date and lettering were visible. Most off-center errors are minor, but this one? It was so extreme, so cleanly struck, and so rare for the year. It sold for $14,500, even with wear and signs of handling. And then there's the double denomination strike. This is the kind of error collectors dream about, but never expect to see. One known 1986 P quarter was struck over a 1986 Roosevelt dime. You could actually see Roosevelt's torch running through the eagle on the reverse. The obverse showed a terrifying fusion of Washington's and Roosevelt's faces, something that looked like it came from a science fiction movie. That coin sold for a staggering $119,000. And yes, it was found in circulated condition, discovered in a coin sorting machine bin. Another shocker, the partial clad layer error, where one side of the coin is missing its outer nickel layer, revealing the copper core. It makes the quarter appear two-toned, and many people confuse it for post-mint damage. But for the 1986 P, this error is highly collectible and extremely rare. One such piece, dull and scratched, still pulled in $8,750 at a major East Coast coin show. And just when you thought that was the peak, a 1986 P surfaced with a major die break through the word Liberty. It looked like lightning had struck the top of Washington's head and cracked through the entire design. The break was big enough to feel with your finger, and it was verified as a late-stage retained cut error. It sold for $16,200, despite being heavily circulated with edge dings. Let's not forget the wrong planche errors, including a 1986 P quarter struck on a 5-cent blank, which made the coin smaller, thinner, and incomplete. It looked like a reject until it was authenticated. Final price tag? $42,000. And the coin was so beat up that most collectors would have tossed it aside. Even without dramatic errors, the 1986 P is hard to find in pristine shape. The dies used that year were overused and often left weak strikes, poor rims, and mushy details. So when one example in MS-67 plus its condition showed up with deep luster and sharp feather detail on the reverse eagle, it shook the grading community. That single coin, no errors, just flawless quality, sold for $6,400. So how do you spot the valuable ones? Start with the rim. Look for misalignment or flattening. Check the color. A reddish hue or two-tone surface might signal a missing clad layer. Look closely at the word Liberty. And the date. Doubling, cracks, or softness in the details could mean something big. And weigh the coin. If it feels off, lighter or heavier than usual, it might be struck on the wrong planche. The 1986 P is the perfect example of a don't judge a book by its cover coin. It hides in plain sight, looks boring, feels cheap. And yet, under the right circumstances, it can deliver a jaw-dropping payout that would shock even veteran collectors. And that's why we keep hunting. Because your next big discovery might not be a shiny silver rarity. It might be an old worn-out quarter, or just like this one, holding a secret that could change everything. Thanks for sticking with us here at my Coin Hunt Daily, where every coin tells a story, and sometimes that story ends with a six-figure surprise. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Because what we're revealing next might just be the most explosive modern quarter error ever recorded. Now get ready, because next up is the 1981 P Washington quarter in fine condition. It's got a bit of wear, maybe lost some of its luster, and let's be honest, it's the kind of coin most people don't even pause to look at. No silver, no fancy design, just a worn quarter with a little P stamped under George Washington's neck. But here's the wild twist. This exact coin might be one of the most misleading pieces of modern U.S. coinage ever struck. Why? Because in 1981, the Philadelphia Mint was working at breakneck speed. Over 500 million quarters were pumped out that year, and many of them were riddled with striking problems, die fatigue, and quality control issues. This means errors slipped through the cracks. And not just the usual small stuff. We're talking major, headline-grabbing mistakes, the kind that can take a 25-cent coin and turn it into a $100,000 prize. Let's start with the most mind-blowing one, the rare double denomination error. One known 1981 P quarter was struck over a struck Roosevelt dime. Think about that. Two completely different coins, two different sizes, mashed together by accident at the mint. The result? Washington's bust surrounded by remnants of a dime's torch and lettering. That coin sold for a heart-stopping $112,000. And here's the crazy part. It was found in change and initially thought to be counterfeit. It wasn't. It was a genuine U.S. Mint error. And now it's locked away in a private collection. But the surprises don't stop there. Off-center strikes from 1981 P are also incredibly valuable, especially when they're at least 15% off and show full date and mint mark. One in fine condition, yes, with wear and circulation, still brought in $9,750 at auction. Why? Because it was off-center enough to be dramatic, but clear enough to be authentic. It stood out, and collectors loved that. Another winner? The clipped plancher errors. These are coins that were cut from blank metal sheets incorrectly, leaving crescent-shaped bites missing from the edge. One verified 1981 P with a deep crescent clip, found in fine condition, was authenticated and sold for $6,400. Again, a coin that most people would think is damaged junk turned out to be pure treasure. And don't overlook the missing clad layer error, a favorite among error hunters. 1981 Ps are known to have a few of these out in the wild. The coin looks copper-colored or dull brown instead of silver. Most people toss it aside thinking it's just corroded. But a genuine 1981 P missing clad layer, even in worn condition, fetched $8,100. That's not rare silver, that's just a strange mint mistake. Now, if your 1981 P doesn't have any wild error features, don't count it out just yet. Because here's a shocking fact, MS-67 examples are so rare, even without any errors, they're worth thousands. The Philadelphia Mint had major problems producing sharply struck, clean-surfaced quarters that year. Most are loaded with tiny marks, poor luster, or weak detail, even when uncirculated. That's why a true MS-67, clean from edge to edge with full strike and bright shine, sold for $5,750. And today, that number's climbing as collectors race to fill high-grade sets. So let's break this down. If your 1981 P has any of the following: off-center strike, missing clad, ghost images, plancher clips, or looks like it was stamped over something else, you're not looking at a damaged coin. You're looking at a potential 5- or 6-figure payday. Even in fine condition where most collectors ignore it, the right type of 1981 P can become one of the most valuable quarters of the decade. It's the definition of a sleeper coin, plain on the outside, powerful on the inside. And next, we're diving into a quarter that's wrapped in controversy. A coin so strange, experts once debated if it was even real, until it sold for more than the average house. Stay with us here at Coin Hunt Daily. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because what's coming next will leave you speechless. Last but definitely not least, we have the 1994 D Washington quarter, a coin so common, so ordinary, most people wouldn't think twice about spending it. You've seen it before. The bold D below Washington's neck marks it as a Denver Mint issue. It's scratched, a little dull, worn from years of circulation. But what if I told you that some versions of this exact quarter have sold for the price of a new car, or even a small home? Sounds unbelievable, right? That's the power of hidden mint errors, freak accidents that slipped past inspectors and landed directly into circulation. And in 1994, that exact thing happened, in spectacular fashion. Let's start with the basics. More than 880,001,994 D quarters were struck. That's a mind-boggling number. But within that giant sea of coins, something wild happened. A small number of them were minted using die alignment and plancher feed errors that created some of the most dramatic-looking quarters ever seen. One of the most jaw-dropping examples? A double denomination strike where a 1994 D quarter was struck over a Lincoln cent. That means the reverse had the eagle, but the obverse had Washington's face mixed with Lincoln's head and cent lettering. It looked like a Frankenstein coin, and collectors went berserk. That one-off error sold for a mind-melting $106,250. And yes, it was found in circulated condition. Another shocking find from this year is the off-center broad strike with partial collar, where the coin appears stretched or swollen with some of the design pushed off to the side. These types of mint blunders are rare, but when they happen on a high mintage coin like the 1994 D, collectors go all in. One such piece with 30% off-center alignment sold for $9,400, even with heavy wear. And yes, it was discovered in a coin roll from a bank. And then there's the missing clad layer error again, a favorite of coin hunters. These coins appear red or coppery instead of silver, making them look like damaged pennies at first glance. But if it's the real deal, a missing clad 1994 D quarter can bring in $7,800 or more, depending on how dramatic the error appears. Now here's a twist most people don't expect. Some 1994 D quarters were found struck on experimental planchets, coin blanks not intended for standard quarter production. In one jaw-dropping case, a coin was struck on a foreign alloy blank intended for another denomination altogether. It looked strange, weighed light, and didn't quite ring like a regular quarter. That piece? Authenticated and sold for $89,500. And it all started because someone noticed it felt off. Even without major errors, finding a super high-grade 1994 D is like striking gold. Most coins from that year were poorly handled, especially at the Denver Mint, where speed took priority over perfection. That's why coins with no contact marks, deep luster, and perfect strike details are incredibly scarce. One flawless MS-67 example, no errors, just perfection, brought in $6,750 at auction. That's a huge payout for a coin most people wouldn't think twice about. So what's the lesson here? That even the most basic-looking circulated quarter can hide a fortune. If your 1994 D looks weird, off-center, double-stamped, missing part of the design, or oddly colored, do not toss it aside. You could be holding a six-figure error, the kind of coin that gets featured in coin magazines and locked away in display cases. This coin wraps up our incredible journey through the top 10 most valuable quarter dollars, proof that what looks like small change can actually be a massive payday. From doubled dies to plancher errors, misstrikes to missing layers, these coins have shocked the collecting world and made ordinary Americans into lucky discoverers of rare fortune. And if you've made it this far, you're officially a part of the hunt. So before you spend another quarter, take a second look, because the next great discovery might just be sitting in your pocket. Thanks for watching Coin Hunt Daily, where history meets hidden treasure. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share with someone who needs to check their change, because you never know, the next millionaire could be you.